Hiya! You might have seen the first video in this series about the forthcoming Glynneath election that was introduced by my granddaughter Cora.
I'm Cora from Wales, and
we had our grandchildren for the first week of this election campaign, so we like to include them in the things that we do whenever possible. I believe it to be part of the learning process from a child to adult to be part of society. They watch and learn from older children and adults. It's a form of learned behaviour known as observational learning. This is Cora finishing her introduction and me introducing myself in the Miners' Welfare Park one day.
you have it now.
Thank you Cora for that wonderful introduction. My name's Di Richards and I'm standing as a councillor for the Glynneath Town Council and the Neath and Talbot County Borough Council.
And the next day, this is Cora in Pontwalby Play Park, and what you're about to see is completely unrehearsed.
Can I have the GoPro? Yo, it's me again. My name is Di Richards, and I'm from Wales too. So you need to go home. Have you got a mom and a dad? Whoa, you're a mom and a dad? Yeah. Oh! Here we go, folks. Oh!
I never tire of that video, but I'm here to do a job. I'm here to tell you about safety in Glynneath. Seatbelts stop you going through the windscreen if you crash at speed.
Roofers use scaffolding to stop workers falling off roofs. Motorcyclists wear helmets to protect their heads if they crash, and zebra crossings are there to help you cross the road safely. Everywhere you go, you can see safety measures because it's an important part of life. Keeping yourself is important if you want to live a long life. Less safety means more deaths and injuries on our roads, building sites and in other places. These are all measures that we can see. We can see the seatbelts, the scaffolding, the helmets and the zebra crossings. But what are the dangers we can't see? Remember the COVID pandemic? We all had to wear masks when we were out and about. There were safety masks everywhere. You never saw COVID, but you knew it was there. You may have had COVID, but you didn't see it, did you? It was too small to see. There were laws made during COVID to prevent the spread of the disease. We all remember lockdown and the countrywide restrictions. And what about gas masks during war to prevent poisonous gas and chemicals from being inhaled? Gas attacks first happened in World War I in the Second Battle of Ypres in 1915. There were treaties made after World War I to prevent the use of poisonous gas during warfare. In 1928, the Geneva Protocol prohibited the use of poisonous gases in warfare. COVID and mustard gas are only two invisible killers. There are many. These are killers. Killers you can't see. They can and they will hurt you if you do not use safety precautions in their presence.
I'm at the Hale Glyn landfill site in Glynneath that is marked by the council on their local development plan as suitable for housing.
There are planning approvals at Hale Glyn that go as far back as 1990 that indicate houses can be built here. Despite the fact that for the majority of the last 85 years it has been a tip, both a domestic and industrial landfill site. In 2008 and 2020, the site was chemically tested and contamination was found to be above the safety guidelines on both occasions. This information was submitted to the council through the developer's planning agent. There are laws to govern and prevent the spread of contamination. the 1990 Environmental Protection Act and the 1974 Control of Pollution Act are just two of these. When I found out that I was living next to a contaminated landfill site, I wanted to know more about chemical contamination. So when in doubt, I always ask my kids. I have two with chemistry PhDs, both respected scientists and working in the field of chemistry. I asked them their educated opinions, and they both say that safety is of paramount importance when dealing with chemicals. Any chemist will tell you this, and they both say that not enough is known about how chemicals affect the human body for toxicologists to be sure about anything. I asked what the toxicologist was, and they pointed me in the direction of Google. Google is great for what is accepted as the norm, but for an overview that was steeped in history, I turned to the trusty Encyclopedia Britannica for an accepted toxicology definition. Toxicology is the study of poisons and their effects, particularly on living systems. To be more specific about toxicology, I then went to Loomis Essentials of Toxicology, the accepted expert publication for a more exact definition and the specific branch of toxicology I needed, which is environmental toxicology. Is the branch of toxicology that deals with the incidental exposure to chemicals that appear basically as contaminants of air, food or water. Let's return to the Glen landfill site and look at the most recent chemical test. This is the chemical test made on the 13th of October 2020. If we look at this most recent test at the tip, we will see that there are at least 6 different contaminants that have been identified at the site. They can be found in 17 locations which are marked in red on the chart as being above the safety guidelines. I'm only going to look at one of those on the list, the most well-known, lead. From this image, we see that the lead on the site in one of the test locations is above the safety guidelines. The World Health Organization are the leading world governing authority for health issues. There is a lot of information in this image about lead poisoning, but what the World Health Organization do stipulate is that there is no exposure to lead that is known to be without harmful effects. In other words, lead in any dose, if ingested, will harm you. So the exact safety level for lead is 0. And what is clear from this information is that the people of Glynneath are more at risk of lead poisoning because of this, and lead is not the only contaminant. If we look at the other contaminants, we can see that the land has been found to be contaminated with 6 different chemicals, up to 9 times the safety guidelines. Residents bordering the site have known for years that there has been hazardous waste dumped at the site. This is a curious resident who lives overlooking the site who saw barrels on the site about to be buried in the spoil heap. He wanted to know what was in the barrels, so he went on site to physically check them. I asked him what was in the barrels. He said they were sealed, but when he kicked them,
onto the tip, give him a kick, I could feel it.
So you actually kicked the barrels, yeah?
They weren't empty, Di.
Yeah.
They were full.
Yeah.
he is not the only resident who has seen what they consider to be illegal activity at the tip. The following government organisations have been supplied with the information about the barrels and the potential for toxic waste poisoning of the residents: Neath Talbot Borough Council and Natural Resources Wales. Natural Resources Wales say it's too expensive to excavate the spoil heap to investigate this report, while Neath Talbot Council Planning Department have given the go-ahead to excavate the spoil heap and move it closer to residents' properties in Bryn Hyfryd without testing it first for contamination, thereby removing the safety precautions. Excluding the removal of stockpiled material in this planning approval image means that toxic waste in the spoil heap will also be moved next to properties to fill in the stream. We see here a picture of the Cuddy Group in action at the site. If you can't see any houses being built, it's because they never built one during the entirety of their existence. In fact, there is no evidence of the Cuddy Group ever attempting to build anything that looks remotely like a house or the groundwork for a housing development such as a road or drainage system. What you are seeing here is the Cuddy Group moving around toxic waste so they can dump more toxic waste on land that they own without regulation. This is what the Cuddy Group did. They demolished industrial works and they removed chemical waste and asbestos from these locations to other unspecified places. They tipped for a period of several years at the Hale of Glyn landfill site. Moving toxic waste around releases dangerous chemicals into the atmosphere, such as carcinogens, mutagens and neurotoxins. I would suggest that this is the reason why, if you live in a property bordering the site, you are approximately 112 times more likely to die of a rare neurodegenerative brain disorder such as progressive supranuclear palsy, which affects only 1 in 100,000 people annually. The risk of this happening to you and your family if you live in another part of Glynneath, I would suggest decreases the further away you are from the tip, depending of course on which way the wind blows.
Only the Cuddy Group know what's buried in this tip. So ask yourself these questions.
Do you trust the Cuddy Group to have genuinely tipped clean soil? Do you trust the Welsh Government to do their job? Do you trust the Planning Department at the Neath Talbot Council? Do you trust the Glynneath councillors Del Morgan and Simon Noyle? If the answer is no to any of these questions, then you should be concerned about the safety of yourself and your family if you live in Glynneath. Because all these organisations and people have worked together to avoid the correct safety precautions on a toxic waste dump in your area.
On the baby seesaw with my bike. And I also have my helmet on.
Life is precious. Protect it.
I was married to Alwyn Rees Phillips for 50 years. Lost the love of my life.
Alwyn passed away on the 30th of December 2020 and she died of PSP, progressive supranuclear palsy. She got taken from us with this illness.